All right, welcome to episode 7 of the Jake Blanchard podcast. Today, I am honored to have John Vander Giessen here. John is an Idaho kid, did his college in Idaho as well, but he also had an international journey playing professional rugby, finds himself back in Idaho now. We're going to talk about playing professional sports. We're going to talk about career life after professional sports, and then also kind of the motivational, inspiring journey that John has gone through in his life. John, welcome to Jake Blanchard podcast.
Jake, it is fun to be here, man. I'm looking forward to this.
All right, perfect. Hey, I give you a quick intro. I just wanted to let the folks know that you are my first guest ever with a Wikipedia page. So I'm pretty excited about that as well. So if you've got some time, I'll put the link in the about section when I post this podcast, but check it out. Some cool photos of John there playing professional rugby as well. John, why don't you unpack your background a little bit more for us so we can get to know you, and then let's go on this journey together for the next 20 or 30 minutes or so.
Love it, Jake. Absolutely. So, yeah, as you mentioned, I'm an Idaho kid. I grew up in Jerome County, which is about 2 hours south of Boise, where I live now. Just kind of a rural upbringing. My family had a farm. Originally came out from South Holland, Illinois, in the 70s. There's a little Dutch community out there outside of Chicago, and then my dad kind of manifested moving out to Idaho and getting a farm out here. So about almost a mile square, 530 acres or so farm. And he had that for, like 30 something years, and ended up selling that around the same time I went to the University of Idaho. I got done with high school. I really didn't have a guidance counselor or I know I'm going to be this. I had really no idea. I just looked around and my mom was like, well, you could go to the community college here. And I was like, oh no, I need to fly the coop. So I took the most, reasonable route and, cost effective too, where I knew that there was quite a few friends of mine going to that school, which was University of Idaho. Go Vandals. So went up there, and it was funny because I was a really small kid. I mean, now I'm, on this podcast today, I'm 6'6" and, nearly 40. So I've lost a lot of weight since my professional athletic days. But Jake, my first driver's license said 5'7", 125. And when I got to college, I was a little bit taller. But I was like Reggie Miller skinny. And if you don't know who Reggie Miller is, he's like, he's a basketball player back in the day for the Pacers, but super thin. And, I was still growing into my body. But when I got up to university, I did well to become a party animal, I would say, frankly, for that first couple of semesters, and got my way onto study table in my fraternity very quickly, which was basically, if you're not in class, then you're studying. So I had to learn what it was to become more academic, which was great. And I also had something left in the tank, Jake, where I was like, man, I just got to do something. And my great friend, Brian Murphy, who's a firefighter for Anchorage Fire Department now, he looked at me, he's like, man, you should come play rugby. I'm doing it. A couple other buddies are doing it. And I was like, what's rugby? I had never heard the word. And so fast forward that week, Tuesday, Thursday trainings, have no idea what I'm doing. Still like, oh, there's a ball. I see there's a ball. And then we just kind of run at each other. And that's kind of what I learned in that first couple of days. And then went out to that weekend, which was actually in September of 2001. And I played that weekend and absolutely loved it. I had no idea what I was doing, Jake. I broke all the rules, plenty of infractions, but it was just intense. It was physical, and it was just a lot of fun too. I walked off the field and I was like, I don't know what that was, but I need to know more. Interestingly enough, a guy who, 20 years later is now one of my best friends and a dear mentor of mine in my life, Joe McGurkin, excuse me, he came up to me after the game. I did not know him. And he said, hey, don't let anybody tell you that you're not the right body type for this game. And you can go as far as you want to go. And I was looking at him like, I don't even know what you mean. What do you mean as far as I want to go? Because I didn't understand that there was a Rugby World Cup played every 4 years with a host nation. It was, one of the top viewed sporting events in the world. And there was a professional network, the Super 15, the English Premiership, the French Top 14. There's just some great competitions around the world that are played at an incredibly high level of professionalism. And so anyway, back to that day, I walked away and I went to a computer lab and did some research and found out about the game. And so I just decided to withdraw from University of Idaho and buy a one-way ticket to Australia, because the 2003 World Cup was going to be hosted by Australia.
Well, okay, so I got to slow you down a little bit. That's a huge jump. All right, so first off, Joe was his name. I'm sorry, Joe
Yeah, Joe
McGurkin.
McGurkin. Yeah.
So Joe plants a seed, or opens the door, opens your eyes, and says, "Hey, listen, like you can be unlimited in this, just like we do so much for I guess other people that we come into contact with. We just say you can do whatever you want, right? You can be at the top level of this. That inspires you to go sit down in a computer lab, and then how long between that time and buying a one-way ticket to Australia?
Well, basically, I did that in September. I did that research, continued to go down the rabbit hole. A few people gave me like VHS tapes of old international games.
Yeah,
And because, YouTube didn't exist. I mean, there was no way to just turn on TV like there is now and watch rugby. I mean, it's so accessible now. That's amazing. And that's what I tell people in general, just taking a quick pause, Jake. We've got to realize how many resources we have. Tony Robbins says it best. He he says, we don't lack resources, we lack resourcefulness.
right.
And we have so much at our hands right now. If you don't know something, you can get online immediately and within a short amount of time become very knowledgeable, and with a little bit more investment become incredibly knowledgeable about whatever it is. You have so many resources that even just in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, we didn't really have that. So it's incredible. And by the way, how we're connected, Jake, and other great people around the planet, through rugby and through technology, just with DMing people, I've got incredible access and response from very high level people that actually reach back out to you, and you can engage
Absolutely.
with them. It's so fun. It's so fun. So side note there, but so I did a little research and started watching those VHS tapes, got a couple of more games under my belt with the University of Idaho. And then early 2003, I took off and flew
Wow.
to Australia. So it was pretty short. Had just a few months of prep. Um, and I flew into Sydney. I was supposed to be in Brisbane, but on the map it was about 2 inches, but it turns out that's the equivalent of going from Florida to New York. I'd never been out of the country before, just the farm kid going out there, figuring things out. And man, it was a wild time. I got a room in a hostel, or a bed in a hostel, and played my first game, scored a couple of tries. And then this English guy came up to me, Carter Croft, a retired dentist that was a coach now for the University of Queensland. And he said, "Hey, mate, where are you staying? What are you doing? What's your story?" Started asking questions and figured out I was in a hostel. He's like, "Oh, just come stay with me,"
Wow.
which is very representative of the rugby community in general. They're some unbelievable people that are very giving, and I saw that through my entire career of people just willing to open up their communities, their doors around the world. And I have those kind of level of friends to this day, which is fantastic. So anyway, I stayed with Carter for quite some time, and then found a spot about 2 blocks off of University of Queensland, and continued to play. Had an unbelievable time. Have a great respect for Australian rugby and Australian people. They're fantastic. And at that point in time, it was time for me to go back to the United States. And I was starting to plan my master's, Jake, and it was going to be in conjunction with the Peace Corps doing coastal resource management in the Philippines. Around the same time, just a few months beforehand, I got an email from that Carter gentleman who, we had fun together. There's a group of guys. It was a good laugh. We weren't incredibly close by any means, but I got this email out of the blue, and it said, "Hey, John, I've moved to France and I'm coaching a rugby team. Would you like to come and play with me or for me as the coach? And I was like, wow, I don't really know Carter that well. And I mean, France, I mean, that's just so wild. It was like blowing my young mind about, well, okay. And so I wrote him a huge email asking all sorts of questions. How do visas work? You know, is their pay? Is there the flights, you know, and accommodation and, you know, everything. Just trying to get certainty is what I was trying to do. I was trying to get certainty and poke holes in it too so that I could say no. Well, after this big long email, you know, a few weeks or however long went by, and he replied and he was like, fly into Geneva, I'll collect you there. That was the only thing the email said. And
That's
in my mind, I was
savage.
like, I'm Geneva. I was like, is that even in France? What's going on? So I thought on it, and you know, just something inside me was like, just say yes, just go, just do it, just figure it out. And so I did fly into Geneva, and I walked off the airplane, and Carter was there to collect me. So worked out smashingly, and then all of a sudden, you know, I'm in the French league, you know, at a lower level, just men's club kind of stuff. But men's club rugby is tough, Jake. I mean, it's violent, and they're very passionate people, and so that was a great stepping stone for me as I continued to get a little bit more experienced and seasoned and grow up in the game a little bit. So unbelievable time. You know, I did some under the table cash jobs while I was there because keep in mind, I'm a young kid and I'm an amateur, and you know, I'm just trying to, you know, hand to mouth kind of a scenario.
Right.
I'm doing it. I'm a under the table security guard at a French disco in Chamonix, which is an unbelievable ski town, and you know, painting and construction and just whatever, just getting after it because it was so exciting and I was having a fantastic time. Well, I ended up having a game where I played a fairly good match, and this gentleman from New Zealand came up to me afterwards. He was like, "Hey, I'm on vacation here, and you know, I've got connections with the Hawke's Bay Rugby Union. I think that you need to be in New Zealand. I see something in you, and we need to do that." Now, pushing pause at that point in time, I was a bit taken back. I was like, I don't know what he's talking about. I'm just traveling the world having a good time. And I've already got basically my professional career in environmental science mapped out
Okay.
because I've got my master's to wrap up. You know, I've got the Peace Corps assignment already, which is in conjunction with the master's. And, you know, at that point in time afterwards, I was going to have, you know, a good opportunity to work around the world doing some pretty cool projects. So that was kind of what I was about. And I thought long and hard, and I was just, it was definitely the hardest decision I'd ever had to make to that point in time. And my sister Dana, she said it wonderfully. She was like, John, you could go to the Peace Corps when you're like 50. Like you just got to get after it right now and go play rugby. And I was like, okay, cool. And so after playing a full season in France, I flew directly down to New Zealand and started another season there. And that's where things really, really picked up for me, Jake, because a small farm club in a city league. It was the only farm team in a city league. It's called Waipukurau in Central Hawke's Bay. Shout out to Waipuc. They're awesome people there. And they just welcomed me with open arms. The whole community just got behind me. Yo, here, you know, here's a bed for you for a while. Like we've got a couple of jobs. We can get you out on a sheep station, you know, working on a farm for a while, like whatever you need to do. And I mean, the head coach arrived with a half of a lamb freshly butchered for me when I got there, right? Like
Wow.
it was, yeah, it was so incredibly giving. And so at that point in time in my New Zealand experience, the first time I was in New Zealand, I played, I think in that 12 months, I played something like 50 something games. And so I was just on a hockey stick curve of knowledge. Now, the thing about New Zealand is there's roughly four plus million people there. The last time I checked, and you know, 5 times as many sheep, but they're commonly number one in the world in rugby, and that it's just their culture. And so at that point in time, man, things just really took off for me, and the local provincial team, the Hawke's Bay Magpies, they kind of took me into their development squad as well, and so I got some really great exposure. And then all of a sudden, I start getting emails from the US team, and they're saying, hey, you need to fly over to the US so we can take a look at you, meet us in Santa Barbara. And again, somebody else reaching out to me saying, hey, I understand that you've got a little bit of interest from the US team. Why don't you come out to California, train with me, and we'll make sure that you get on one of the provincial sides, the Southern California Griffins, so that they can get a good look at you. And again, Kevin Battle didn't need to do that. Carter Croft didn't need to do that. Joe McGurkin didn't need to do that. But they were all willing to say something to somebody when that somebody couldn't see it in themselves. And so that's something that I've always taken forward, Jake, is make sure that you're giving a hand up to people.
Right.
Because they didn't have to open up those doors, man. And I can tell you, and we could go for another hour about specific people in my life that opened up a door. Didn't have to, but they did. And it was absolutely profound, the ramifications thereafter. I mean, total butterfly effect, which is wild.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I mean, there's no absence of having to do the work, right? You're there, you're performing, you're getting after it, but it's not just an attitude thing, it's a performance thing. It's, somebody seeing all of the potential that is John, or anybody that you're mentoring in life, or have the opportunity to impact in a positive way, and putting that hand out, putting those kinds of words out, that's such a catalyst for what's next for you. I mean, it's so funny. It's like, you were talking about authoring your own journey for coastal environmental, sustainability. And then, other folks come in, pick up the pen and say, hey, how about maybe exploring this? That's wild.
yeah, right. And I'm just thankful for some reason, and I don't know why. I was just open. I was
Right.
open-minded enough to say, maybe this isn't the path.
Yeah.
Maybe this isn't this. I thought this was my path, and things are showing up in my life. And I don't know what you want to call them, Jake, synchronicities in the universe, or whatever it is, right? You're depending on your beliefs. It was just too perfect along the way. It was too perfect. Now, mind you, you had to say yes, and that's something, what I find, very much so like this Zambian trip that I mentioned to you, that I'm going on pretty quickly. Too often, I've noticed that people find reasons to say no. They say no to a lot of things because they find a limiting belief that they want to hold on to in order to kind of stay safe, stay the same, and not put themselves out there a little bit to stretch, to grow, to experience new things. And that's where growth is, when you lean into that. So I definitely would encourage people to analyze why they're making the decisions they're making. And hey, could you do something a little bit differently, and get outside yourself or your current self, for sure.
Have you always been a bit adventurous, or is that something you developed over time?
Oh, I mean, I don't know if it was adventurous or maybe just ignorance.
Okay.
Uh, where it was legitimately like, oh, okay, well, yeah, let's go do this. Let's see what this is like. And I'm thankful for that. But yeah, definitely willing to take a shot at something and figure it out along the way. That safety security thing for me is not as high as some people, for sure. But I think that I'm mindful of that too, and I take just a moment to contemplate. When my friend Guillermo, just recently, I mentioned to you off recording, that he was like, John, do you want to go on a walking safari with me in Zambia in October? And what did I do? I said, oh, it'd be too expensive. Oh, I can't get away from my family, my wife, and I've got a newborn, and my 9-year-old, and my job, and I've got all these real estate things happening. Everything. I found everything, possible to say no. And then I stopped and I said, well, what evidence do I have that those are actually true? And
Right.
then I talked to my wife. I looked at my schedule for my job, looked at my finances. I said, well, what would need to happen in order for it to take place? And then my brain all of a sudden starts firing, and I'm like, whoa, oh, hang on, maybe it is. And then I start getting a little bit of excitement. You can feel it, and you're like, oh, okay, like, let's keep asking more questions. And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, this can happen. Let's do this. And I'm so glad because again, Jake, as you know, like who knows who I'm going to meet on the trip? Who knows what I'm going to experience? How is that going to impact me? And what kind of relationships and experiences and opportunities are going to spin off because of just saying yes, just finding a way to say yes.
What an incredible skill to develop internally is the ability to ask yourself questions in a positive or a what if kind of way, as opposed to, you know, doing what most of us do is, shooting it down right out of the gate. Right. So that, that I think people should definitely pay attention to what you just said and how you just said it, which is you asked yourself the question differently. And then you started looking at your resources and your timing, and you started to erode all of those reasons why you wouldn't be able to do, probably one of the best experiences you'll probably ever have in your life is going out and walking. How long are you going to go for?
It's going to be about 9, 10 days.
Wow.
So we're gonna look to do about 10-ish miles a day, and we have a guide with a really big gun. So
Okay.
uh,
That's
we'll
going to
see
be.
what happens.
Hey, so John, let's pivot back. So you come to
Yeah.
the U.S. You're in Santa Barbara, right? And you get onto a is it professional rugby? Excuse my ignorance.
No, 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 no. It's actually just sort of like a scouting team for they take all the regions of the United States back then is how the U.S. national team did it, and then get them all together, and then like Southern California will play, the Midwest,
Okay.
and then scouts and the national team coaches are going to be watching and kind of saying, hey, do we want to invite these people? Who do we want to invite to the next U.S. national team camp? And so, I did enough in those camps to get my name on the board, and then started to have some USA national team camps. And so that's a lot of the times was held at the Chula Vista Olympic Training Center in San Diego, which is an amazing facility. And it was funny because like the Winklevoss twins, when they were rowing, they're there too, while we're training. And there's just all these great people that are all moving in a similar direction, which is cool to actually get into that. That was that first little, other than in Hawke's Bay, being around people that are professionals.
Okay.
And that was pretty game changing to me because I got to observe what they were doing on an individual basis and on a team basis on a daily basis. And what that did to me is it showed me that being consistent and persistent with doing a little bit more, showing up a little bit early, preparing, going home and doing extras. What I found is that, as an example, looking at me, I was never the biggest. I was never the strongest. I was never the fastest. I certainly didn't have the highest rugby IQ. I didn't grow up like those New Zealand kids that are literally 3 years old playing touch rugby, right? But what I did have is I was willing to do more, and I was willing to commit myself to being a professional. And and I think in now that I'm in the business world, I'm seeing similarities to that everywhere, where the people that are willing to ask a few more questions of themselves and do a little bit more, uh, they just naturally rise to the top. It's pretty amazing. It really is.
Yeah, there's always room for the best at the top, right? I mean, if you're willing to put the work in, if you're willing to grind, like that's where you're going to go, just naturally through being consistent, persistent, just like you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. As I sit in the real estate game now, there's no shortage of real estate agents. I mean, just in little Boise here, I mean, I think the IMLS, we've got like 6,000 agents. And what I've found is that the majority of those agents don't do any business. I mean, it's like a starving artist kind of a scenario. But they're really not willing, by and large, to show up and commit to going bigger. And what the idea of it is, I love. I mean, it's hard being not successful, but it's also hard to be successful. So you might as well just pick the one that makes you successful.
That is, I'm going to take that away as probably as the best quote so far. So it's hard to be unsuccessful. It's also hard to be successful. It's hard either way. Pick one.
Yeah, no doubt.
So how long did you then? So ended up going from these club teams, and then you represented the U.S. I believe twice nationally, in 2017, 2011. Is that correct?
It's 2007 and 2011, and what was really wild, those were the World Cups. So within that time period, there was about 4+ years where I was in the mix for the U.S. national team. Now, what people need to understand is that once you make the team, you're not on the team for a year or whatever. You don't sign a contract for 12 months. I believe that USA Soccer is similar, and basically what happens is you have to be at the peak of your game all the time, and you get selected for every single game. So
Wow.
what's really interesting is we have a jersey ceremony every night before an international game. And it's a really special thing. And they give you that jersey because that is your jersey. That's You earned that jersey for that day. And you may never get an opportunity to represent the US team again. And everybody realizes that every time. And so, I mean, I say that now and I still get goosebumps because it is a very passionate and important thing anytime you get to represent the United States. And I took it really seriously. And so I actually was able to earn, I think, 23 international test games. So I've got those jerseys back at home, and I occasionally give them out to people that have, like Carter Croft and Joe McGurkin and those sorts of folks that, they helped me get there. I was able to get there on their shoulders for sure. So in 2007, interestingly, I was the young buck. There was just some great guys on the squad already that had a ton of experience, and I learned a lot from them. And I learned how to be tough from them. I mean, especially my position on the field, a lot of the time they're looked at as an enforcer and doing a lot of hard work, just moving bodies. That was catching line out balls, which is like an out of bounds play, and moving bodies. When there's a pile of bodies on the ball, that needs to be cleared out. So 2007 came around, trained a lot with the U.S. team, and then put it all out there on the table. And the coach said, "John, you've been amazing, but we've got to go with experience." And I could respect that, being a young player. But I said, you know what? I'm going to stay on the East Coast of the United States because the host country was France for that World Cup. And I said, just in the event that there's an injury or just there might be a chance, I'm going to stay. And I'm going to stay ready, and I'm going to be on the East Coast so I could fly out immediately. And interestingly enough, and this is such a bizarre story but I got to share it. One of my friends, somebody I knew, said, "Hey, John, I spoke with my psychic." I was like, "What?" They said, "Yeah," and I just randomly asked about you. And they said, "Oh yeah, John's going to the World Cup, and John's going to go on this day, this specific day. And this is what I see for John." And there were some very specific details to what they said. This person doesn't know me, the psychic, never has known me. And I was like, "Oh, that's pretty wild, but whatever." I'm not kidding, Jake. 3 o'clock in the morning on that day, the Peter Thorburn, the head coach of the U.S. team at the time, calls me up on my cell phone. "John, get to the airport. You're going to the World Cup." On the same day the psychic told me. It was so great. I mean, just absolutely crazy.
That that is insane. I don't even know how to process that.
I don't know either, man. I still don't know how to process it, but all I know is I went and it happened. And one of the things the psychic said is, make sure John tapes his left ankle the whole time. I didn't have a left ankle problem. And you better believe I was taping my left ankle the
Oh,
whole time in
there'd be
training, right?
there'd be no tape left at the World Cup for me, man. I'd be
Yeah.
I'd be finding tape everywhere.
Yeah, physiotherapists were like, "What's up, John? Like, did you do?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no, just feeling a little twinge. Like, just want to make sure we got some extra support." I'm like, "Don't ask, right?" I didn't tell anybody what happened.
I'd be walking around like a mummy. I'd be, I'd have, hey, so,
So,
so you played in 2017, or excuse me,
2007.
2007.
Yeah.
and then you played another 20 plus games or so, like throughout this 4 or 5 year period. Is
Well,
that
what was interesting is in 2007, I got to go to the World Cup, and I got to be that injury reserve, that filled in for somebody in my position that did get hurt. But I never earned a jersey in France for the World Cup, and
wow?
I didn't step on the field. I just trained, and I was on the sidelines ready, kind of a thing. And that poured fire on me, because at that level, at that stage, I mean, full stadiums, there's 20, 25, 30,000 people. I mean, it's an unbelievable event. And I believe the US is going to host the Rugby World Cup at some point in time, which will be fantastic. But so I went back and I got serious and wanted to level up. And then all of a sudden, somebody from France reached out to me, and asked, can I be your agent, kind of a thing. And then sure enough, a deal popped up. So things were getting really interesting. And that was at the top 14 level with Albie at the time. And so I said, yes, I said, absolutely. Like that's a no brainer. So, I get paid now, and you give me I get a car, and I get a cool apartment, and all these things. And it was just unbelievable to me. I've got, all this kit, everything, like everything that I was like begging and borrowing and stealing, to find in Idaho. Like, hey, do you have rugby shorts I could borrow so I could go play the game, so I don't have to wear basketball shorts in a rugby match, which is ridiculous, and you see a lot of people do. um, so yeah, it was just a wild thing. Like I was just so grateful. Like, wow. And a lot of these professionals, like they've been in that so long, I think that they almost don't appreciate that, where you have people doing things for you all the time. When I earned a contract with the English Premiership team, Bath, uh, you were essentially a racehorse, Jake. I mean, I would walk off a training. I would have a GPS monitor with a heart rate monitor for me, so they knew exactly, how maximal I was during how long of the training. And then there would be a shaker made with the right macros for me to drink as a recovery drink directly after. And then we'd go to the clubhouse, and there would be a chef that had prepared food for the whole team. And I mean, it just never stopped. There was always somebody doing something for you so you could be at your maximum performance. And what's interesting is it was your job to be at your maximum performance. And what I don't see in the professional world and, civilian, if you will, after rugby, is I don't see people doing that the same way, Jake. And I think this is an important point that I'm going to make. You should still be trying to invest in yourself as much as possible so that you could be at your top game. I find a lot of people in society, whenever you do something for yourself, you're selfish.
Right.
And being selfish is poorly looked at. And I would challenge people to think of it a little bit differently as well. When I actually do something for myself, it means that I can be my best self, and I can help more people. I can do more things. I can be better for my family, my friends, my coworkers, whatever, my team.
Right.
So
Yeah, it raises your level of impact. Your the concentric circles of your life, right? I mean, if you go down all the way into the center, that's you've got to put your life jacket on first, or put your air mask on first, right? Take care of yourself, and then you really start to take care of the people in your community. Start to take your family, your community, your state, however big you want those circles to get. But it's got to start with you, and it's got to start with a drive for, success or growth or acquiring knowledge or something, right?
massively, absolutely, you've got to have a why. And there's a great book out there, Simon Sinek's book on why. And Jim Rohn grew up here just outside of Boise, and he always says, work harder on yourself than you do your job. And I can't tell you how much that's been true for me in my life. Like I've spent a fair bit of money and time and resources, and even if I didn't have the money, there's, like, again, going back to resources, there's a ton of ways to work on yourself for free or close to it, right?
Yeah.
And every time I've invested in myself, better things have happened in my professional world too.
Well,
I think
John,
that's
I'm curious then, like you spend several years playing at a level that folks are taking care of you. They're monitoring, they're checking out your macros, you're a professional athlete, right?
right.
And then you just contrasted it to the business world, What was that like then? I mean, you went from, high level performance, intensity, regimented schedules, traveling the world, resources and people around you. And then you decided to stop playing rugby when, and then how did you start to transition that?
So from 2007 World Cup, really committed, and I knew I had 4 years to prepare for 2011. So just got really into it. Earned a couple of contracts ahead of 2011 World Cup with those professional teams in Europe, and just I got to a peak performance with my body. I was 265 and 9% body fat and had great cardio.
Six
And
six 265.
yeah, and it was fantastic. But I had
That's a big
people
boy.
that were, yeah, I'm a shadow of my former self. So um, now, yeah, I just had a lot of people that were in my camp that wanted to see me win, and then I was able to represent the U.S. as the captain of the U.S. team for a time, and then moving into the 2011 World Cup, had an injury in Portugal and crushed my orbital, and then had to deal. We were playing against Portugal and had to deal with that injury ahead of the World Cup, but opted out of surgery. I don't think I was ever going to be a model anyway, Jake. So, you know, I'm a little bit I'm not symmetrical. So, but anyway, we went into the World Cup. Had a couple of unbelievable games. One of those was 2000 or September 11th against Ireland. And what was interesting is it was so full circle for me because I started in September of 2001. And then here I am 10 years later, 10,000 hours, however you want to put it.
Right.
And then it's September and it's New Zealand again, where I really that was one of my major turning points in my rugby career. Waipukurau came out in full force and supported me. They came to a game, and that was amazing. It gives me chills to think about how much support. Last game of the pool match play was against Italy. The whistle blew, and I just had a feeling, Jake. I knew it was done. I knew that fire and that spark wasn't there, and I knew the U.S. team had 4 years to prepare somebody else to be ready for the next World Cup, and I wanted that somebody to be ready, and it meant me removing myself at the top of my game and going and doing something else. So I came back home, and this is a big thing to talk about, and this could be a whole podcast in its own right. But the journey for professional athletes to retire and find themselves and find their stride after sports is so incredibly challenging, and I don't think that enough people understand that. There's not a big spotlight on depression with professional athletes, because you have to see it's your whole identity, it's who you are. There's this big endorphin rush every week, and you've got this camaraderie and the support. There's the spotlight. I was on TV often, which was never like a big draw for me, but nonetheless,
Right.
there's this whole package of what you are. John is a rugby player. That's what John is. And then John was not. And then John didn't know who John was. And I think that that's a very recurring thing with a lot of professional athletes. It's tough because you have this high thing that you're doing, and then it's nothing's there, or you perceive nothing to be there. And so when I actually figured out that John wasn't a rugby player, rugby was something John did, and John's a lot more, then things started to get more momentum. But I had my days, Jake. I mean, I had some really dark days, and I had a relationship that ended, and a very young daughter at the time, at 6 months old, and I'm in a house that's empty by myself with my daughter, and where do you go from there? And all the while doing a startup company with another former U.S. team player, James Patterson, and I. And I mean, it was just incredibly challenging days. And some days I just didn't know how I was going to get out. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know how to pay bills. And I was just deficient. I was deficient. I was emotionally bankrupt, financially bankrupt. And then I just started asking questions. Okay, John, where do you want to go? What direction? You get to choose. What do you want to do? And so every day, just putting a little bit in the bank, just trying to fill those bank accounts emotionally and financially up again. and build up something else. And that's what's taken place since 2011. And now, my team here locally, Lacey Bishop Real Estate, we sell about $235 million in real estate this year, possibly more. And we're top 4 in Keller Williams International as a volume team. So I
Wow.
also founded Stack Rock Capital, which I basically help people invest in apartment deals around the country in strategic metro areas that make sense, so that they can get the benefit of real estate, but be passive in that and not have to worry about picking up the phone and dealing with tenants at 3 a.m. or something like that. Right. So, and I've got another beautiful girl, and so I've got these 2 daughters and my lovely wife. We've been married for 2 years, and really, it's just been about finding myself and not going alone, because there's people out there like that are willing to help me again, open up a door, give me a shot, give me an opportunity, and then it's on me after that just to produce and follow up and be the best person I can be.
Well, John, it's interesting that you described your journey as like, you had a recognition of your current state of like, hey, I'm emotionally bankrupt. I'm not feeling well. Like, and you work through that. You said kind of day over day. Was there anything in particular that helped you shift your paradigm and realize that you were a professional athlete and now you're a professional in this business world, and that like the professionalism is the same skill sets, it's the same doing the extras, it's the same showing up, it's the same giving your effort, you're just overlaying it into a different industry? Or is that something that you worked at over time and then you stopped and you realized you were in a much different place than you were in, and then you had that reflection? Which one was it, or was it a mixture of both? I mean, I'm just so interested in that process.
It was just an organic moment where I said, there was a moment where I legitimately said, okay, John, like, who do you want to be? And I think everybody can write a story. I really believe that. So there was one day, I was, thankfully my buddy Lane, who I've been training with for 20 years now, he'd be like, hey, come over to my garage. Let's work out a little bit. So, and I stopped working out because I told myself, I said, I trained for 10 years. Why should I should take a little break? No, don't stop. You're not going to die. Just keep moving. The
Yeah.
number one, I would say, get moving. If you're not moving, if you are moving, keep moving.
Okay.
It's okay.
It's great
You're going
advice.
to be fine. You're going to be fine. So keep moving. But I mean, I would go over to Lane's, train, and then I would go home and I'd go to bed because I was so depressed. And then all of a sudden, how am I going to pay rent? I'm trying to hustle. I'm thinking about. I started driving Uber. Just trying to make something work while I have this startup company. And it was just wild. I mean, Jake, it was wild times. But nonetheless, you got to choose, and
Yeah.
you've got to take action. That's really what it came down to. And then I started listening to things. I got on eBay and I bought Jim Rohn's, 6 CD set, and I just played it on loop in my car because I was cognizant of the time. I had somebody in my life that was telling me a lot of negative things about myself, and you start to believe them, even if you're strong. When there's somebody there, trying to peck at you all the time. I mean, there's chinks in your armor eventually, and so I started to surround myself with people. And at that point in time, I just had a very small core of people around me. And a lot of the friends of convenience went away when I wasn't on TV a lot,
Sure.
which that's just kind of life, right? But I surrounded myself with people that didn't even know that they were being my mentor. I was doing, Jim Rohn CDs, which he's the OG compared to Tony Robbins, right?
Right.
He's been around for a long time. And then something came into my life where I was like, I need a coach. I had coaches through all of my life, coaches, teachers, mentors. I had them all. And then all of a sudden, when you become a parent and you're supposed to be in the workforce, you don't do that anymore. That's a weird thing.
Very weird.
It's a very weird thing. And I said, well, I'm going to have to get mentors. Yeah, Jim Rohn didn't know he was a mentor. He was also passed away by that time. Tony Robbins, YouTube, like whatever. There's so much resource out there. It's insane. And you can pick little gold nuggets every day to start, keeping away. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to double down on myself, because if I'm going to be different, I'm going to have to take massive action. And I got a Tony Robbins coach. Actually, strangely enough, after like 6 or more months, I connected with Erica yesterday. Shout out to Erica Becker. She's got a book coming out in December. It's going to be amazing.
Wonderful.
And yeah, she's a fantastic coach, somebody that you could certainly interview on the podcast too.
I'd love to
She's
have her. Absolutely.
cool. And at that point in time, the amount of money that it took to get Erica as a coach was more than I probably made in 6 months. Maybe more, honestly.
Yeah.
Thousands of dollars. And I said, whatever, I'm just going to figure it out. I've got to say yes here. I've got to move forward. And I know that I don't want to be here, so I'm going to move.
Well,
and huge decision, huge.
Huge. And I've paid for coaching several times in my life in different areas. I've seeked out different skill sets. What people forget is you're paying for speed. Like you're paying for somebody who's been there, who has a perspective that's either different than yours or further along the path than where you are today, and that can help time collapse that for you to get where you want to go quickly, so you can pour into your business, so you can pour into other people, so you can live the life that you want to live. And it took me, probably about 4 or 5 years ago to really start making some of those investments. And I've just seen all the changes in my life. And, I'm a high performance coach as well. And I see it in my clients' life. So I love the sentiment that you're talking about there, is just going out and understanding, if you're a professional, you also need a coach, or you need an ecosystem around you when you find a deficiency.
Jake, it's like you took the words out of my mouth that I've said 50 times to people. Is I needed a way to condense time. I know where I'm going. That's actually, like, it's happened. Time hasn't caught up yet.
Right.
What I'm looking for now, Jake, is I'm looking to condense time, collapse it so that it happens faster. And it's a better ride when you go with people, by the way, because your coach wants to see you win.
Exactly.
It's in their interest. It's in your interest. It's mutually beneficial. And it's just a great time where you can share with somebody that, like, I've had coaches cry for me. They cried. They care about me so much in a specific conversation. They're crying because they're so passionate about me. How many people do some folks out there have that will do that for you? I mean, some people don't even have family that will do that for them. So you've got to identify who that is in your life, or who you could get in your life that will be that way for you, and to really allow you to see the best in yourself that you're not seeing right now, and to ask those tough questions, and to kind of be there. A coach isn't going to be there to beat you up. It's not like the proverbial high school football coach that's screaming in your face and spit's coming out of their mouth. It's not about that. It's about walking hand in hand with you on a journey of life, and being there for you, and to contemplate and to consider and adjust and help. And it's been absolutely transformational for me. So I couldn't recommend that more to people wanting a change.
Hey, John, we are getting close on time here. First off, I want to ask you, is there anything else that you want to share with folks, just from a mindset perspective, from a positivity perspective, anything that you could share to help motivate others, catalyze others into a journey like yourself?
I think the most important thing I've been contemplating recently is standing guard at the gates of your mind. I didn't make that up. That's just something that I'm sharing with you. And I think that that's important right now. And it's always going to be important in life, because if you're not standing guard, at the gates of your mind, who is? Especially when you have so much out there with negativity and polarization and just a lot of things out there, you can get bogged down in that. And that's inhibiting your clarity to fulfill your highest and best self, with the most opportunity to help others and to do big things. Do the things that you are meant to be. So standing guard at the gate of your mind, that's a big thing. And also, don't go alone. Reach out to people. There's somebody out there that can help you and you can help them, and connect with that person. Just find them. Start asking questions. You'd be surprised at how the right person pops up in your life.
John, some incredible insights. Hey, I want to first off, I want to thank you for agreeing to come on to the podcast. Your story is one that fires me up. I love that you said yes throughout your journey. I love that you reflect on the people who helped open doors for you. I love to hear about your athletics career as well as the paradigm shift as you're a very successful professional here in Idaho with real estate. How do people look you up? How do people contact you, find you moving forward?
That's great, Jake, and it's a pleasure too, man. I really enjoy our conversations. I look forward to doing it again sometime as well. You can connect with me. You can go to my website, stackrockcapital.com, or you can email me, john@stackrockcapital.com. I'm certainly happy to connect with people, share, discuss whatever it is they want to discuss. I'm a pretty open door and very accessible.
Well, John, I definitely would like to do this again here in a couple of months. So looking forward to sending that reach out to you. And again, man, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you being guest number 7 here on the podcast.
Awesome, Jake. Thank you, bud.